from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 50 Latino as voted on by the Latino Spirit online magazine, certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it is me, Fernando Uribe. Happy September, everybody. I hope you all had a wonderful summer. It's great to be back in the studio, and of course, covering what's going on in Hudson County politics and beyond. As always, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, most of the summer I was able to enjoy, got to hang out with friends, some nice females, whatever the case may be, do some day drinking, whatever the case, go catch a ball game. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm always keeping my eye on what's going on in Hudson County politics, and there's never, ever a shortage of things to talk about. And one thing that really caught my eye over the summer, certainly during Pride Month, I happened to be on the radar of Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, as well as members of the city council that support Ravi Bala, who I affectionately like to refer to as the Lollipop Guild, because as we all know that during Pride Month, they're pretty good at pandering to the LGBTQ plus minus whatever community. Again, I can't even begin to keep track of the acronym. It just seems to change every other month. But during Pride Month, obviously some things I said on Twitter caught the attention of the mayor of the Mosque Square City, as well as others there in the city of Hoboken. Now, folks, let me just sort of preface this by saying that, I'm not homophobic or transphobic. I have many friends in the LGBTQ community. All right, but this is what's interesting. Maybe because I'm an academic and I tend to be a little more literal than most people. The idea of being anything phobic just seems asinine to me. Because when I think of the word phobia, when you look it up in the dictionary, it's very simply put, folks, it means that you're afraid of something, that there's this sort of paralyzing fear that overcomes you when you have a phobia. Now, I'm not afraid of a lot of things, maybe needles, and that's about it. I don't mind jumping out of airplanes. I don't mind going to Great Adventure, jumping on a roller coaster, going to the Meadowlands Fair, doing a lot of stupid things that we tend to do, right? Now, I'm not afraid of those things, okay? I'm arguably afraid of needles. I've never gotten any ink in my life, and I choose not to. But one thing I'm not afraid of, folks, is gay people, trans people of any kind, nor am I even uncomfortable with them. But of course, folks, for many on the left, when you are even remotely critical of their community, well, it's just the low-hanging fruit, right? He's bigoted, he's a homophobe, he's a transphobe, he doesn't like lesbians, he doesn't like bi people, he doesn't like queers. No, ladies and gentlemen, that's not the case. But again, for members of the peanut gallery in Hudson County, right, those that lean heavy way on the left, of course, when they don't have any facts, they'll just go for personal attacks, and once again, the low-hanging fruit. But what's interesting, during Pride Month, obviously, Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala chose to go after me and retweeting something that I put out on Twitter. And of course, on my Real Talk with Fernando Uribe show via Jersey First TV, which, by the way, you can catch on Monday nights via jerseyfirsttv.org, I decided to cook the mayor of the Mosque Square City along with the members of the Lollipop Guild. That didn't go over too well, and certainly it ruffles some feathers. But what's interesting is when it comes to pandering, when it comes to just acquiescing to some of the woke nonsense that's permeating in today's political culture, well, you can always expect, sort of rely on Ravi Bala, Joe Quintero, Phil Cohen, Emily Jabor, and anybody else in City Hall that endorses their nonsense to sort of gladly play along. And of course, this past week, a story came to my attention. And by the way, shout out to John Hines, the editor-in-chief of the Hudson County View, a tremendous news site here in Hudson County. Of course, a member of the Pinnacle in Hudson County as well. But you know what? When it came to my attention about a story that was emanating out of the city of Hoboken, I had to sort of almost do like a double take, like, wait, what? Did they really waste time and money on this? But they actually did. So let me preface this by saying, of course, recently, and shout out to Daniel Oloa, one of the great reporters and journalists working at the Hudson County View. The Hoboken City Council unanimously approves, quote, a book sanctuary city resolution. My God. Now, the Hoboken City Council recently approved unanimously, and this is shocking, folks, why Ruben Ramos, why Mike Russo, why others on the city council. Again, if you're not a member of the Lollipop Guild and someone who acquiesces to Ravi Bala at all times, I'm shocked that members of the city council would actually vote on this. I get it's an election year. You don't want to piss off anybody. You don't want to piss off your base. You want to make sure you don't lose a sort of, voter demographic. But this is absurd. All right, for members of the city council that are actually caving to this stupidity, I have to start questioning why you're doing this. Having said that, now they unanimously approved a resolution declaring the municipality a, quote, book sanctuary city last week. Now, according to Jenny Pugh, another, useless bureaucrat in the city of Hoboken, right, again, very much within the realm of what's going on in the Mile Square City, she happens to also be the director of the Hoboken Public Library. She wanted to say, quote, book bans are nothing new. Last year, we saw a record number of attempts to ban books. This movement is hardly an isolated one. She noted most banning efforts on a large scale are directed towards stories featuring people of color and members of the LGBTQ plus community. That's not true. But again, Jenny would rather cry victimhood and virtue signal than actually talk about facts. Pooh noted in June that the library held a banned books readathon. Well, you can call it that, Jenny, but when you're having drag queens out there and in the vicinity of children, I wouldn't necessarily call that the best and healthiest environment for kids. But it's interesting how you omit that from, again, your ongoing cries for victimhood, which drew the ire of Republicans across the country, and after the event was shared by the popular far-right Twitter account, Libs of TikTok. By the way, folks, if you are on Twitter and you follow Libs of TikTok, they perform an incredible service, because what the Libs of TikTok are doing is sharing stories, not just in New Jersey, but across the country, of school districts that sort of take it upon themselves to be, subversive of parents, to keep things from parents, which, again, at the end of the day, folks, parents are parents, okay? It's their kids, and they have a right to know what's going on with their kids. So when we see school districts, right, or a movement of people that feel it's okay to withhold information from parents, right, I would argue that there's something shady there. So, again, bravo to the Libs of TikTok, because they're the ones sharing stories. They're the ones sharing footage, whether on YouTube, whether at school board meetings, right? Whether it's just parents dropping off their kids for the first day of school, and you're seeing some teachers, A, dressed inappropriately, maybe in some instances, B, dressed in drag, or C, talking about rhetoric in front of children as young as 5 that they shouldn't be discussing around them to begin with, right? So Jenny goes on to say, quote, in this era of unprecedented censorship and challenges to intellectual freedom, which is really rich coming from someone like her who sounds totally left-wing, our work takes on new urgency and vital importance. By creating a book sanctuary, we're raising awareness of the ongoing attack. We are showing solidarity with our sister libraries and book sanctuaries all across North America. We are doubling down on our commitment to our freedom to read. She explained the library is 130 years old and has focused on highlighting different books and ideas and fighting book banning. Third Ward Council candidate Ed Reep, for example, began noting that in 2021, after the January 6th insurrection, Amazon removed, quote, the Turner Diaries from purchases due to its anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi ideology. He continued that the local legislation in front of the city council could use some changes, which is true. Quote, he said, these are amendments that we'd like to see made because I think we can all work together and stop censorship. I've been a victim of censorship before. I've been banned from Hoboken and social media. And of course, I've written books, self-published them, and they've been censored as well. Well, folks, when you think about the ordinance, and this is what's really, really funny here, because when you look at what happened essentially, right, we talk about those who introduced the ordinance. And to no one's surprise, folks, Emily Jabor and Phil Cohen have to be two of the most useless elected officials I've ever laid eyes on. And that says a lot. When we've lived through an era of Barack Obama, now with Joe Biden, right, with Governor Phil Murphy and others that quite frankly are doing us all a disservice, whether on the national level or a state level. Okay, but now at the local level for the city of Hoboken, what's interesting, and this is what's really, really, I think, nauseating, okay? In a city like Hoboken, where parking is still a problem, clowns like Ravi Bala, Emily Jabor, Joe Quintero, even Mike DeFusco as well, okay, and Phil Cohen would rather focus on pronouns. In a city like Hoboken that's infested with rats, okay? Not just the rats at City Hall, like the ones I just described, right? Like the aforementioned people, right? But actual physical rodents that are overwhelming city streets in Hoboken, okay? They're a public health hazard for our children, for the elderly, for our schools, and for our local businesses. You would think that with these pressing problems in the city of Hoboken, plus, again, ladies and gentlemen, overdevelopment, property taxes, rents continue to skyrocket, okay? All right? The city budget to some extent probably is getting, as fat as the latest Victoria's Secret models that they're auditioning, all right? When you think about these real issues, instead, Ravi Bala and the Lollipop Guild would rather virtue signal, and would rather focus on nonsense like repainting the city sidewalks or crosswalks in the rainbow colors that were there during Pride Month. You want to talk about wasting time and money on things that really don't matter. Again, to Ravi, to Emily, to Phil, to Joe, and the rest of the Lollipop Guild at City Hall that acquiesces to this nonsense. Okay? In a time where Hoboken, again, is still experiencing flooding, okay, where they think that, building another park, what is this, like the 10th park in the last, year that they've built or something. Again, folks, I'm all about green spaces. I think kids need a place to play and all that stuff. That's fine. You want to go walk your dog, you want to go on a date, you want to go read a book in the park. That's not a problem. I don't have an issue with that. But once again, folks, when flooding continues in the city of Hoboken, as rats are overwhelming the city population, as rents continue to skyrocket, as we keep seeing more and more buildings being constructed in Hoboken, Ravi Bala, Emily Jabor, Phil Cohen, Joe Quintero, and the rest of the Lollipop Guild would rather focus on something like making Hoboken a sanctuary city for books. Folks, now more than ever, this November, do me a favor. Write somebody in, get some of these clowns out of office. Right? Because if this is how they're wasting your taxpayer dollars in the city of Hoboken, just imagine giving them another term. Listen, if it's all about virtue signaling, if it's all about, espousing woke nonsense, and again, reminding us that these are grown adults, some with law degrees. I mean, they're clearly telling us that A, they failed high school biology whenever they took it, wherever they took it, that they clearly never took an economics course and passed it, okay? Or that somehow, they're all of a sudden they've become climatologists and have this vast knowledge of climate science. Folks, we all know that's not true. In a time, once again, where Hoboken is experiencing a plethora of problems, this is what the Hoboken City Council is focusing on. Now, again, I'm not surprised seeing this from the Lollipop Guild. And, of course, the mayor rubber stamping this. I'm disappointed in people like Mike Russo and Ruben Ramos. You would think that, hey, they wouldn't subscribe to this stupidity. They wouldn't subscribe to this nonsense. But alas, here we are. And they're doing that. Shame on them. And more importantly, folks, shame on Ravi Bala pushing this nonsense. Shame on Emily Jabor. Shame on Phil Cohen. And shame on Joe Quintero. Oh, wait. You know what? They should be ashamed of themselves, but then again, that will require them to have shame to begin with. And let's be honest. We all know they don't have any. Their priorities, well, we all know where they are, folks. Again, it seems like pronouns are more important to worry about in Hoboken than parking and other real everyday issues. Makes you wonder what they're doing down there in the Mouse Square City. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. And now some local stories for your consideration. And let's move on to Jersey City. And once again, thank you to John Hines and Daniel Uloa from the Hudson County View for their reporting on this very important story. Now, apparently, it's being indicated at a recent Jersey City rally that activists are calling for the U.S. Attorney to look into a probe concerning the death of Andrew Washington. Now, at a rally recently for Andrew Jerome Washington, a mentally ill man who was killed recently after lunging at police with a knife during a mental health episode, according, for example, to activist Larry Ham, is calling for the U.S. Attorney to launch his own investigation. Now, the organizations Build More Unity and the Panthers Solidarity Committee coordinated the protests, which included a number of other local activists. So, for example, Nevin Perkins of Black Men United, which, to be honest with you folks, I don't really think too highly of that organization, considering that they've blocked me on social media and they've gone as far as calling me racist and bigoted when I'm nothing of the kind. They just don't like to be criticized when they're doing things like virtue signaling or crying race for anything and everything. Having said that, they went on to say, quote, "We're here for justice. This is not a celebration. We're here for justice for Drew." Again, as Nevin Perkins of Black Men United served as the master of ceremonies for the event. He also wanted to say, quote, "There's a lot of misinformation being circulated. The enemies thrive off misinformation. We're here to stand for Drew. The fight doesn't end today. What we know is that on August 27th, Drew was killed by the Jersey Police Department. His family called for help. That call for help resulted in murder. Now, the groups collectively called for the release of police body camera footage of the incident, direct monetary compensation to the family, immediate implementation of better policing policies, and a direct apology from Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, who Perkins described as having callousness when discussing the situation. At a press conference recently, the day after the incident occurred, Fulop and Public Safety Director James Shea, who has been with the administration since the beginning of 2013, indicated that the fatal shooting was justified since Washington lunged at police officers with a knife while in closed quarters. Fulop, along with other elected and community leaders, have called on the New Jersey Attorney General's office, good luck with that one, who is spearheading the investigation, I don't have any faith in that, to release the body camera video. Now, let's be honest, let's see what Andrew Plotkin's doing when he's not, virtue signaling for the LGBTQ community, or, again, reminding us that he slept through constitutional law in law school, right, when we all know what the Second Amendment says. We'll see what Andrew gets to and whenever he gets to this. But again, quote, after Drew was shot, he was taken out by the police, and the police didn't communicate to the family that Drew was shot. The family thought Drew might have been injured with a pellet gun, that they should hear from him soon, Perkins exclaimed. And we referenced comments from Washington's aunt, Doris Tony Irvin, at a vigil in front of his former house last week, where she stated that the family was not informed Washington had been shot for over 3 hours. Now, Perkins further stated that money for crisis interventionists is out there and that Fulop should not have been allowed to see the body camera video before the general public. Again, with all due respect to Mr. Perkins, he doesn't know his ass from his elbow. We all know what the protocol is. Okay? In a shooting like this, the mayor is going to have access to it, and so is the police department before the general public. Folks, I don't make the rules. That's just the way it is. That's just not Jersey City. That's the way it is in the entire state of New Jersey. If you have a qualm, go protest outside the Attorney General's office in Trenton. God knows he could use the attention, right? Now, Perkins also went on to say, quote, in our society, we often hear a phrase, innocent until proven guilty. Yet for Drew, this fundamental principle was turned on its head. The police invaded his home, and without due process of law, our cousin's life was abruptly and irrevocably ended. Also, Tony Perkins, Washington's cousin, who know that his late relative suffered from bipolar disorder. Now, Tony Perkins continued that a mental health condition is, quote, not a justifiable reason for execution, as well as that police officers, quote, should be guardians, not warriors. Now is the time for a united front, because that's the only way we're going to get justice, according to Larry Hamm, who is the executive director of the People's Organization for Progress. Folks, let me just unpackage this a little bit. Now, again, notwithstanding my dislike for groups, race-baiting groups like Black Men United, okay? They're raising some legitimate concerns, but this is what happened, okay? If you all watched the press conference by Mayor Fulop, and we all know that, again, Mayor Fulop and I don't exactly get along all the time, but I have a healthy respect for Stephen, okay? And what Stephen did at the press conference was absolutely correct. The idea that, again, it's great for a lot of these activists to have this sort of Monday morning quarterbacking mentality when it comes to, well, this should have been done and that should have been done. It's real easy when you're sitting on your ass at home on your couch or on your computer or behind your smartphone. Now, again, as someone who worked in the criminal justice system for over 10 years before transitioning into working in academia, higher ed, and also in media, folks, this is the thing, okay? If you go back and watch the press conference, everything Stephen Fulop said was correct, all right? This sort of Monday morning quarterbacking or the idea that, people want to sort of speak on hearsay. Folks, here are the facts, okay? And we know some cities are trying to do this on an experimental level about having, social workers, psychologists, mental health professionals on the scene. That's not always possible. And the idea that before a premises is secured, to allow an unarmed civilian into that area is just not safe. You're opening yourself up to liability and lawsuits. But again, folks, a lot of these, virtue signaling, social justice warriors, and all these woke activists that think that they know more than you and I, folks, right? Trained professionals in the field, will tell you, well, that's not good enough. There should be one always on call. Folks, that's not always realistic. Okay? Even a city as large as Jersey City, with a budget as large as many of the other large cities in the state of New Jersey, that just might not be possible. The idea about having a mental health crisis worker right there and then, hey folks, he or she may not be available. Okay? And again, as Mayor Fulop had said during the press conference, if you cannot secure the premises, how do you allow someone like that to enter a home? And if a guy is having a mental health crisis, listen, and I'm sorry, and I feel for the family of Mr. Washington. It's unfortunate what happened. But if the guy's grabbing a knife, I hate to break it to you folks, if someone's coming at me with a knife and I'm armed with some sort of weapon, I'm going to shoot him. And so would all of you. Stop your sort of ivory tower hypocrisy, because we all know that whether it was, a pellet gun or a baton or pepper spray or an actual physical firearm, you're going to use that. If someone's coming at me with a knife, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to lunge for the first thing I can on my utility belt. And if it's a gun, then so be it. It's unfortunate what happened to Mr. Washington, but the idea that, listen, and we all know that the Jersey Police Department has been under the microscope for quite some time by a lot of these activist organizations, even members of the city council. Even those, going back to 3 years ago, right, when we heard the whole, defund the police, defund the police, defund the police. Well, we all know how well that worked out, okay? These are the same activists doing that, okay? You can't have it both ways, okay? I know that a lot of you bitch to live and you live to bitch, but understand that under these circumstances, the officers did what they could. And if someone's lunging at you with a knife, you're going to protect yourself. I'm sorry, folks. It's a simple premise. It's Darwinism at its really at the most basic of its core principle. All right? It's kill or be killed. I'm sorry. I know it's not easy to hear, but I'm not here to coddle you. I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm not here to give you a breast to pacify you with. I'm sorry. That's not my way. I'm here to tell you the facts, and that's what happened that day. Now, we'll see what happens with the Attorney General's office in Trenton, because we all know how useless they can be. And we'll see how long it takes them to finish their investigation, whether it's releasing the body cam footage or anything else. But stay tuned for that, folks. And again, my heart and prayers and condolences go out to the Washington family, but it's not as cut and dry as some activists make it out to be, no matter how hard they try. Let's stay in Hudson County here, and once again, a great job by the Jersey Journal, and a good story here by Ron Zetlinger, the editor of the Jersey Journal, for reporting on the Hudson County Schools of Technology will rename one of the middle school complexes in honor of the retiring county executive. Now, the Community Education and Recreation Center, also known as CERC, in downtown Jersey City will be renamed for Hudson County Executive Tom DeGise, coming up in a ceremony later this week. Now, the building is the home to the Hudson County Schools of Technology's Explore Middle School, of course, Hudson Technical, the post-secondary school, and as well as the District Development Office, and of course the Bob Hurley basketball court. Now, the new name of the building will effectively become the Thomas A. DeGise Center. Now, folks, I have to just tell you that from my experience in dealing with Tom DeGise, he's been a great public servant. He's been a gentleman with me coming on my podcast, which, by the way, folks, Talking the Hudson via blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson will resume with brand new episodes later this fall, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. But during my time, obviously, hosting the podcast, I've had a chance to talk to Tom DeGise on multiple occasions. I've had a chance to talk to his daughter, Amy DeGise, who is currently a councilwoman at large in the Jersey City Council. And from my experience of Tom DeGise, I'll tell you, he's been a fair guy. He's always been a gentleman. He's always been someone that, as far as I'm concerned, is someone that has always been willing to help out anybody, regardless of a Republican, a Democrat, a conservative, a liberal, a progressive, or anybody in between. Tom DeGise has lived a very honorable life in public service. He's had very difficult jobs, folks. If you know anything about being a county executive, you have to manage a lot of egos, you have to manage budgets, you have to manage a lot of infighting and quarrels and bitching and moaning that could take place every single day. And you know what? No ego on behalf of Tom DeGise. Guess what? He went to work, rolled up his sleeves, and you know what? Got the job done. And that's something I think every mayor, past and present, whoever worked with Tom DeGise can tell you that's exactly what he did. And you know what? As he approaches retirement now, since he announced late last year that he's not running for another term as county executive, and subsequently he will be succeeded by his chief of staff, Craig Guy, another wonderful human being who, again, has been a gentleman to me. He's a fan of this show and other shows that I do on my media platforms. Hey, if anyone deserves recognition, it's certainly Tom DeGise. So congratulations to him on this great honor, and once again, a great job by the Hudson County Schools of Technology for bestowing this honor on the retiring county executive, Tom DeGise. Lastly, folks, as we return to the studio this week here in the month of September, obviously we also celebrated, unfortunately, the 22nd anniversary of the terrorist attacks of 9/11 back in 2001. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've grown up in Hudson County my whole life, did move to New Brunswick during my undergraduate days at Rutgers University, but I never lost my roots, and I decided to return here after finishing my undergraduate studies. And I've lived in Hudson County ever since. But again, growing up here, I always got used to the beautiful view that I have, arguably the most beautiful view in anywhere on the planet. And I was spoiled for quite some time, looking at the beautiful Empire State Building, and for a better part of my adolescence into adulthood, looking at the Twin Towers. But that all changed on the morning of September 11, 2001. On that fall Tuesday morning, I remember just seeing what a horrific attack took place on American soil. And it's just something that I'll never forget. And 22 years later, it doesn't get any easier. The skyline's very different for me. And for a lot of kids out there today, they're never going to remember what the attacks look like. For a lot of members of Generation Z or even millennials, they're not going to remember those terrorist attacks. And once again, folks, our lives were changed forever by the terrorist attacks, by radical Islam, by enemies abroad that want to destroy our way of life. And while there are enemies here within our own borders that want to destroy our way of life, we have to sort of go back and remember, folks, what it was like on the morning of September 12th, 2001. We were all Americans, regardless of race, gender, ideology, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, whatever. Folks, that didn't matter. Because on the morning of September 12th, we were all Americans. And it was, again, a moment that we felt pride just come together to rally around us. For so many of us who lost family members, who lost friends, colleagues, classmates, everybody. Those are people we should continue to remember. And remember all the great things that make this country the most, I would argue, the greatest country in the world. And that's not a cliche. I'm not trying to be, hyperbolic. It is. It's why my mom left communism in Cuba. It's why my dad left poverty in Colombia. And why so many come here on rafts and risk their lives for a better life. Let's remember why this country's great. And let's continue to make it great. And as we continue to celebrate, unfortunately, another anniversary of the terrorist attacks of 9/11, not just on New York City, but on the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and certainly the Flight 93 that perished over a rural field in Pennsylvania. Let's think about the bravery of those on the plane. Let's think about the bravery of firefighters, police, first responders, volunteers who went to Ground Zero to help go through the rubble and help rescue anyone that was still alive and try to preserve that scene. Folks, it was a dark day in American history, but it doesn't mean that we have to let it be dark for the rest of our lives. Let's be positive, let's be good to each other, and let's remember everything that we learned from September 11th. Yes, it changed our lives, it changed air travel, it changed our civil liberties, it changed everything in the American way of life. But one thing it didn't change was our resolve, was our determination, quite frankly, folks, the drive to be Americans. Once again, to drive to be the greatest country in the world. Let's remember those lessons as unfortunately we celebrate another anniversary of September 11th. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank the Hudson Media Group for their belief in this program, and of course, and for their belief in this content going strong since April of 2019. To check out all the great content brought to you by the Hudson Media Group, check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook, as well as liking Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe as well. Don't forget to follow them on Instagram and Twitter, and also subscribe to their content on YouTube by looking up the Hudson Media Group. Folks, always remember, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino as voted on by the Latino Spirit online magazine, certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Folks, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, ladies and gentlemen. Please party responsibly. Enjoy the start of the NFL season. Let's go Cowboys. Great start to the season, defeating the Giants at MetLife Stadium. Folks, thank you for watching all the great content here on the Hudson Media Group. And thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for watching Hudson Media Group. Follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.